Hello, all of you. Good evening. So, there are some questions regarding behavioralism. Demerit. What were the demerits? If you can recall from our yesterday's discussion, what was the demerit? Anyone who can tell that to me? What it said? It's not value neutral, and it's very tough to get exact get exact type of conclusions from individual behaviors, and it's not value neutral, which means that yes, subject matter is very much ignored because of procedures and all. And main thing is value neutrality. What is value neutrality? That can you take sides without being attached to any side? That is value neutrality. People will not react similarly. And we have seen these three examples yesterday. I guess you don't have the PPTs, right? So today we are starting with what is called the liberal theory of state. But before we start with liberal theory of state, there is something more I would like to share with you all. Now, what is this something more? And one more thing, I guess everyone is here now because I don't want anyone to miss this thing. What we are discussing right now. All of you here, right? Huh? There are 35 people. One is me, one is Ram sir. So yeah, what I want to tell you that there are several attached concepts. Okay, when I discuss liberal theory of state, there are several attached concepts to liberal theory. Like for example, yesterday we discussed what is liberalism, correct? And then we have to discuss what is state actually. So if I ask you what is state, can any one of you define state for me? What is state? We all studying political science. That is government or mental. No, institution that represents sovereign people. You know which constitutional article defines a state? Very good. Article 12. Not one. Article 12 defines a state. That is where fundamental rights start. Okay, so let us. What I want to tell you, I'll define state and I'll give you the exact component.
SB middle owner.
Hmm? Someone telling something? So we'll see what are the exact components of state. There are four components actually. No, state and executive. Executive is a subset of state. Someone I'll come to it. Don't worry. And apart from that, one thing you have missed, Namo. One thing you have missed. Leave it for now. So apart from that, there is something called postmodernism, because these things will come very handy. We'll discuss state. No, Vaishnavi, not exactly. Anyone heard this term before? What is postmodernism? So we are dealing with several concepts today. Please try to understand these things. Do not worry about your notes at all, because everything, I have, if I pile up my notes, it would cover from here to my face. So don't worry about that. I can provide everything to you, but that would be useless and meaningless until you understand these things. So let us first try to understand these things. Okay. So here we go. Can you recognize these gentlemen? Many can recognize him by his coat. Can you? Anyone? Don't Google who said God is dead. And why would someone say God is dead? Why, what problem one has? So, why would anyone say that? His name is Friedrich Nietzsche. Okay. And he's considered to be kind of father of postmodernism. Now, what is actually postmodernism and what made him say God is dead, and why are we dealing with postmodernism when we have to study liberal theory? And I asked you what is state. So, everything is interrelated. So, first we'll understand the concept and then we will see what is liberal theory of state. Because if I start explaining you liberal theory of state, and then we see such terms, what is postmodernism, what Foucault say, what Nietzsche said, I think this should be the right approach. You know the terms. I have already given you a glossary that you go through until you understand everything in it. And because we will be discussing these terms very every day in our classes. So he's Nietzsche and he said God is dead. What made him say so? We'll discuss very soon. Next, you see what is postmodernism. Anyone who has heard about this thing? So it was actually a reaction. It emerged in France post Second World War. Okay, it emerged in France post Second World War. No, 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 he's not Marx. He's not Mussolini. No, anyone with beard is not Marx. Come on. Okay, I came through the word in the Hindu. Peterson, yes, Peterson has said several things about it. But right now, I just saw all these messages because I was, for whatever reasons, unable to open the chat. So it emerged in France post Second World War. Again, post war development. Okay, now what it says, Not one defined way of life, no ultimate truth, true until it falls, which means anything is true until some other true comes and says that this thing is false. Okay, so very much like science, right? That there is no ultimate truth. Whatever gospels are, whatever ultimate reality is, it can be challenged, and that thing remains true until some other new development falsifies it. So there is nothing absolute true, is what postmodernism believes in. Now, what would have an effect? What would be the effect on political theory, which such kind of theory emerges? Anything, anyone who can guess this? What would be the emergence? What would be the development of such emergence? Because people are so much attached to the theories, right? Their ideologies. And now here comes a theory, here comes one of the theory which says that none of the theory is right. There is nothing called absolute true. So you understand this? That there will be lots of churning out going around now. So it challenges everything. No universal parameter of true and false. What matters is if you are in power or not. So there is nothing, again, a total deviation from ethics and morality. If anything is justified for being into power, okay, postmodernists say that there is no universal parameter of true and false. So one guy's terrorist would be another guy's freedom fighter, correct? Bhagat Singh is our freedom fighter, but for English, he was a terrorist. Burhan Wani is a terrorist for us, but for Kashmiri separatist, he was a freedom fighter. No universal parameter of true and false. You see, not one, no ultimate truth. Did you understand this very simple thing? That nothing is final. Okay, and what matters is if you are in power or not. So do not get attached that I'm doing wrong, I'm doing right. Do anything that can help you seize the power. That is the most important thing, is what postmodernism tells us. Truth is manufactured. There is this famous book by Noam Chomsky. He is an American journalist, although most of the Americans hate him because he is very left of the center. And he wrote this book, Manufacturing Consent. And there he talks about media. See, such a wonderful title, Manufacturing Consent. Okay, so truth actually, he postmodernists believe is manufactured. Same thing is told to you by several media forums. You open YouTube, you see some video. You watch television, you see something. You open radio, you see something. You go out, you read newspaper, magazine, you see the same thing. So these things are being enforced upon you. This is how something lodges into our mind for a long time. So truth is manufactured, is what postmodernists believe. And they say that one should, in order to seize power, in order to hold the office, one must know how to manufacture truth. Okay, this is postmodernism for us. Correct. Now, coming back to what Nietzsche said, why he is angry with God. First, let us try to understand that. Why he says so? Because it implies that there is no ultimate truth, is what he's trying to tell us. And he also says that political philosophers and scholars, they have always misled us. Remember Plato's philosopher king, all of you? So he's saying that Plato is a liar. In fact, Plato is the biggest liar. No, why would someone tell Plato is the biggest liar? Plato, in context of philosopher king, if you can tell us, he because he says that he he has picturized something called philosopher king, and he wants everyone to follow the philosopher king, which means I will have no kind of decision making capability. I will have no autonomy. I'll do what my philosopher king tells us. This will lead to what? Democracy. Come on, tell me. This will lead to what will this tendency lead to if you do not apply your mind and if you follow the philosopher king blindly? Authoritarianism, autocracy, dictatorship, right? So this will lead to totalitarianism or authoritarianism or dictatorship, is what Nietzsche alleges. And he also says that Enlightenment traditions also did no good because they actually went for objectivity, something that we see in science. So he gave the concept of will to power. Okay, will to power. There is will to power in all of us, is what Nietzsche believes in. And will to power is the reason behind any action. If you are taking this class because you have will, if I'm teaching because I have will, so will to power is the main reason behind any kind of action. And will to power is very strong. Even it is stronger than will to life, is what Nietzsche believes. And knowledge is not free from phenomena of theories. Phenomena of every theory is based on knowledge. Knowledge is actually coming from theories, is what he's saying. So he says that God is dead because God is actually not existing. There is some theory, some religious men people believe that God exists. He says no, no ultimate truth exists. So he's a postmodernist, right? He's a postmodernist, and he's actually the father of postmodernists because he's the first to see. Uh, how many of you are believers here? Anyone who is an atheist here? Anyone? No atheist. कोई काफिर नहीं है. Nietzsche says that nothing like that exists, and he's the first one to challenge that idea that any absolute truth is there. Nothing is absolute, everything is relative, everything varies according to the perception. People have different perceptions, people have different conditionalities, and that's why he challenges the highest authority, the God. And then that's why he says this as father of postmodernism. Okay, please remember this thing because we will revisit Nietzsche and postmodernism in coming classes. Now, this thing we have already seen what postmodernism was, not one. So, there is nothing called ultimate truth, it can be changed. And there is nothing called universal parameter of true and false. So, even ethics and morality can be molded upon. Okay, yesterday we have seen that how what is ethical and moral in one society can be unethical and immoral in some other society. So, of course, this is a postmodernist view. Truth is manufactured. Now, moving on from here, let us see what he further says. State has four components. Very important thing. This is what I asked all of you, and no one replied correctly. Someone was very close. He came close to three components. Territory. State has to have a territory. What is territory? The map of India that you see is a territory, right? First component of state is territory. Next, population. There must be people living on that territory. So we all, the citizens of this country, we are the components of population. We are the population. So two things. First, the land, the map of India, and then the people living there, the territory, the population. Third thing, government. There has to be a government to lead us, to govern us, to administer us. So on territory, in a certain territory, some population is living, and there is a government. That can be any type of government, elected, nominated, dictator. We are not going into that. There has to be a government, and there is just one characteristic that that government needs to have. Anyone who can tell me just one characteristic, irrespective of the nature of the government, democratic, undemocratic, communist, socialist, dictator, fascist, not going into that, but one thing is compulsory for that government. Anyone?
Accountability.
No, not accountability. I already said if it can be a fascist government, then how come accountability is coming? I already said it can be a communist government, then how come accountability
Where
is
is it power?
La.
There's sovereignty.
beautiful? Who is this?
Shreyas.
Can you type and send? I can of course hear you all, but sovereignty is the correct thing. Sovereignty. Now, what is sovereignty? Who can tell? Very basic definition I'm asking. Not what Bodin and Austin and Kotela have defined it.
Power to take one's decision
Independently. Right to take one decisions independently. Okay. So all the students who are preparing for this exam, do not be sovereign. Do not read things on your own. Do what we say. So you need to submit your sovereignty. Okay. So these four components have to be there for a state to be called a legitimate state. Okay. These are the four prerequisites. Like for appearing in UPSC, you have to be a graduate. So in order to be called a state, these 4 degrees are to be there. These 4 criteria or eligibility or prerequisites have to be there. Territory, population, government, sovereignty. You all know what the first three are. You also know what is sovereignty, but I have to dwell upon it a little further. Sovereignty means the capability or authority to take all your decisions by yourself. How many of you are sovereign? How many of you take all your decisions, not asking your father, mother, sister, brother? We are not. We do take references, right? And there can be just one sovereign in one country. So who is the sovereign? Of course, India is a sovereign country, which means whosoever represents India is sovereign. Who is holding the office, the prime minister or the president of India, they are sovereign. No one else is. So this is what sovereignty, the 4 components are here given here. Now, something more I have to tell you. Sovereignty, again, it's this is not just like I told you. Sovereignty was also, maybe a king has a king. Suppose prime minister is sovereign, but prime minister has a council of ministers with whom he consults. for several decisions, right? Maybe he will take the final call, but of course, the views can impact his decision, correct? Yes or no? You understood this? Prime Minister has to take decisions collectively. He can call upon the CCS. What is CCS? Anyone? CCS. I'm referring strictly to. Please.
Central Cabinet Secretary.
No. I'm talking about the Union Cabinet. Then I'm asking you what is CCS.
The security one, sir. Cabinet Committee on Security.
Very good. Who is this?
Hari Krishna.
Are good, Hari. Very good. Uh, this is the highest decision-making body. See, again, I'm coming into Indian government and politics part. I told you everything is interrelated. CCS means Cabinet Committee on Security. It comprises of 4 ministries. Anyone who can tell me?
So the Finance, Home,
What?
External Affairs, and the Prime Minister, if I'm not wrong.
External Affairs Minister,
And
Defense Minister, Foreign Minister, Home Minister, headed by the Prime Minister. Technically, 5 people, 4 ministries: Prime Minister, Home Minister, External Affairs Minister, Finance Minister, and Defense Minister, headed by the Prime Minister. This is called CCS, Cabinet Committee on Security. That surgical strike was done with CCS. Not even CCS was consulted. Okay, air strike was of course done with CCS, the Balakot one. So they are the one who decide, the highest committee. So don't you think, despite being Prime Minister being the numero uno, first among equals, his decisions might be influenced by members of his cabinet or maybe by CCS, right? So this is where we come to the next point that I'm trying to tell you. Postmodernism, again, it started first in art, literature, and philosophy. Like people started challenging those pieces which were considered sacrosanct, and which pieces of literature will be considered sacrosanct? The religious texts, right? What is written in Bible, what is written in other religious scriptures, that might be sacrosanct, that too sacred to be touched, cannot be violated. God's word, right? Revealed word. Bible is a revealed book, right? There are just 2 revealed books, दो ही आसमानी किताबें हैं, Bible and Quran. So these things cannot be touched upon. There cannot be other opinion on these things. It's what the believers of these 2 religion abide by. So philosophy, so they started criticizing it. They started raising doubts on these things. Art, literature, philosophy. Why should I believe that church is the supreme? Okay, postmodernists started doing these things. Next, what they did? It's a reaction to modern way of life. Now, postmodernism is an antithesis or a reaction to modern way of life. Why? Because modern way of life has led to certain amount of dissatisfaction. So what is the dissatisfaction that you see as a result of modern way of life? Anyone? Try sending chat if I can open it again. What is the dissatisfaction, the anger, the fault lines that have emerged because of modern way of life?
Monarchy.
Materialism.
Monarchy.
What?
Excessive materialism.
Excessive materialism. Okay, fine. Consumerism, and that has impacted our lifestyle. People are suffering from lifestyle diseases, right? So environmental modernity has caused environmental degradation, war, materialism, everything you can add. Why war? Because it is said that it was the pursuit for material goods as a result of modernism that led to mighty wars, especially the 2 world wars. Environmental degradation. You will study this in your environment and ecology, the carbon footprints that we have left. Post-industrial revolution and pre-industrial revolution. You see the quality of air that we are breathing in, the type of water that we are drinking. Of course, we all drink treated water, not the natural water. So how our rivers and water bodies have been polluted, how the air has turned toxic, how the food that we are eating is also adulterated, not because someone does this adulteration, but because we are not having organic food. It's chemically grown fertilizer, is chemically chemical fertilizers are used in that. So modernity has caused environmental degradation. That is why modernity should be questioned. And why? Because everyone goes with the same view that this is modern, this should be adopted. Disbelieve in any grand theory. So modernity is again a grand theory, that if I say modern, there is certain picture that might come to your mind. Okay, all of you are correct and none of you are wrong when you imagine what you perceive by the term modern. Okay, maybe you see yourself in a mall, maybe some other high-tech places, maybe somewhere in NASA. So everyone is right. Whatever your view of modernity is right, but then modernity is not the panacea for everything. So any grand theory, whosoever tries to have a final word is wrong. whether that's religion, whether that is modernity, whether that is statecraft, politics, anything. Did you understand postmodernism or not? I just gave you an elementary introduction into it. All of you, any questions you have, please ask. Shall I proceed then? Chat is not opening still. It's not a big deal. We can carry on with this. Any questions? Please tell me. What is postmodernism? It's a reaction to modern way of everything, modern way of life, modern way of approaching political theory and science. And why? Because modernism has resulted into. I just need to halt. I'll come back to you. Okay. Welfare, accountability, sovereignty, power after World War II. Does the government is after 18th century? No. Postmodernism is after Second World War, 1945. Aditya, I think even an atheist is a believer. Yeah, the authority which he believes that there is nothing, it makes him a believer, right? I can see all the chat. I'll answer all of you. No, these were dichotomous questions that you have answered it. I've already explained it. Judiciary, civil sovereignty. Is absolute sovereignty possible on this globe? No. Of course, we'll see it. Next thing, that is what we are discussing, monist and pluralist theory. Ravi, you have summed it up correctly. Whoever has final thought on any idea is wrong. That is postmodernism for all of us. You all can hear and see now comfortably, nothing to worry about now. So there is a disbelief in grand theory. Okay, I can see all the chats. Yes, sir. Okay. No issue in postmodernism. Why Nietzsche is called father of postmodernism? He directly says God is there. The ultimate theory, because all of postmodernism again, it challenges any grand narrative. If you try to have a final word or anything, postmodernism will say no, you are wrong, because what you are saying might be true at the moment, but very soon it will become false by some new thing. Some novel means will come. So do not type it to be final authority on everything. And modernist way of life is wrong. It has resulted into catastrophic wars. It has resulted into environmental degradation. There is nothing they absolutely believe in. Try to understand this more, whether democracy or dictatorship. So whether they believe in democracy and then again would be conditional. Something like Anekantvad. Where did you read Anekantvad, Vaishnavi? Are you a Jan? No, you cannot be. Anekantvad, Syadvad. It's good that you know these things. It's a Jan philosophy, okay? Sarath, what you are saying that we can reject postmodernism, actually there is something called logical positivism. I'll give reference of later Wittgenstein and earlier Wittgenstein, and also about Bertrand Russell. And then we will see what is, very briefly, we'll see what is this is logical positivism. And this thing which you have alleged right now, that by this thing even postmodernism becomes some, same thing will be applied to logical positivist also. They also claim something similar, and their claim is, the salvo is fired back on them. So if everything is untrue, even postmodernism becomes untrue. Saying this, that nothing is grand theory, there is no grand theory, this statement is again doubtful or not. If you believe postmodernist, you understand the inherent contradiction here? All of you? Very correctly picked by this boy. What is your name? Sarath. Yes. So if this belief in any grand theory is true, then this statement is also conditioned to be subjected to disbelief, because they are also propounding a theory, right? This is one of the main critique of postmodernism. Yes, and same thing would apply to logical positivist, that we shall see later on. Okay, now Lyotard wrote his book Postmodern Condition, and he used this term for the first time. Lyotard, you have to study about Lyotard, who Lyotard was and what he did. And what he said, he suggests that we should not listen to just one story, because there are different story and there are different storytellers. And we should listen to small narratives, and not just, there is a term that he uses, meta-narrative. Okay, meta-narrative. I'll give you an example. People might say that Modi ji won again because there is a resurgence of Hindutva movement. That is the meta narrative that some news channel and news portal try to tell us, that Modi ji won again because there is a resurgence of Hindutva politics. This is the meta narrative. What Lyotard is saying, that meta narrative should be challenged, and instead small narrative should be focused upon. And the small narrative would say here regarding 2019 Lok Sabha elections in India, that Modi ji won again because he delivered so much on the promises that he made, Jan Dhan Yojana, all that bank account, Jam Trinity, Ujjwala, so on and so forth, direct cash transfer. Okay. the saffron socialism that the ruling party currently is engaging in. So this is what you go to any village and you see there a person who has got LPG cylinder is all what matters to him, right? So again, this is small narrative. Lyotard tells us. Lyotard has used this term postmodernism first time in his book. He was actually a French. He did that after Second World War itself, and he says that meta narratives are useless because again, grand things are not to be believed. Small narrative is all that matters. So listen to the. That's why most of you see these experts sitting into news channel AC rooms, they are often proven wrong on electoral politics. You need to sweat it out on the ground, meet the average voter, know what he thinks. Delhi cannot decide what India will do, right? So that is why he says that meta narratives are useless. It is the small narratives that matter. And truth is also a narrative. Okay, truth is also a narrative. Narrative, you understand, it's a story. Discourse. Again, we have a one full chapter on narrative and discourse. Just telling you the meaning, it's a story, it's a discourse. So different people experience phenomena differently. Okay, and people differently develop different conceptions. Okay, so this is what he says, that there are meta narratives and there are small narratives. Listen to these small narratives, ignore the meta narratives, is what Lyotard, who has used this term postmodern. Idea existed, Nietzsche said something about it, but he actually wrote something on it. Okay, you understood what is meta narrative, what is small narrative? All of you? See, initially few classes I have to take different things at once simultaneously because everything is interrelated. Once you are convergent in this, once 4 or 5 days or 1 week of classes happen, then we'll absolutely focus on the things that we are discussing. Okay, no problem here. I can move here.
Sir, I guess you can't see the chat again. There are messages in the chat.
Again, there are messages. Yes, I can see. Mana is saying it's an irony. They question themselves that Pulwama type was also a narrative. You can consider everything, yes, whether Pulwama or anything you can consider. And whether it's an irony or not, that is for the purist literature meant people to decide, not for political science students. Meta narrative, Vishnu, listen again, meta narrative is the grand narrative. Okay. One big picture that you are shown as the ultimate truth. Lyotard is saying that no, there is nothing called meta narrative. There are small narrative. Pay attention to that. Okay, these small narratives actually are real truth. Okay, so different people perceive phenomena differently. Is Lyotard telling us? What one person says from the top should not be taken as the gospel truth. Now you understood? Any other question? I have the chat box open. No other questions. So I can proceed now. Sovereignty. Now, one more thing. It is what we have already explained. It is autonomy, and there is this monastic theory of sovereignty. Again, very interesting thing, and it's also called Hobbesian theory of. We have to study about Thomas Hobbes in Western political thought. But what is this Hobbesian or monastic theory? Hobbesian because Thomas Hobbes talks about it. Any idea what is monism? What is monism or mono? You understand? Most of you are science students, I'm told. So mono is okay. Monistic means one, bi means two, poly means three, right? So what it tells us emerges from the experience of medieval times when sovereignty was divided. How was sovereignty divided in medieval times? That we shall very soon see. It's actually a Eurocentric concept, okay, European concept. What it is telling us that in medieval times, king was not the alpha and omega. King was not the beginning and the end, alpha and omega. Okay. Why? Because king was validated by whom? I have told this to you. King was validated by anyone? The church, right? Religion used to legitimize the ruler in medieval and ancient Europe. There was this Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. So that is why sovereignty was divided. King is taking all the calls. King is deciding everything that is to be done and how it is to be done. But then how he will become king, that is dependent on something else. The religion, the church. Okay. So sovereignty was actually fragmented. Now what happens? This leads to confusion and chaos. So it was decided that the authority of state should be absolute. So the effect that religion or any other institution, it is actually Hobbes reacted to church only. He's an Enlightenment era thinker, so he reacts to church. Question: what he's saying? He's saying that church is not the one to take calls on politics. Church is not the one to take call on politics. Ruler should take call on politics. Ruler and his rivals, his nobles, his council, these people and citizens can take call. Let sovereignty remain one. Sovereignty, rank one is one, right? Best, there cannot be anything better than best. So when you say best, what happens? You stagnate it. There cannot be any further improvement. What is best, it cannot be improved. There cannot be a best version of a human. We all keep growing until we are alive, right? So what is saying that sovereignty, which means there can be just one sovereign in a country, church or any other institution will not share or fragment it. Correct. So that is why, as a reaction to church, monastic theory or Hobbesian theory emerges of sovereignty. And what it tells us, no institution outside the state, like Roman church in medieval Europe. Actually, Roman church was dismantled by, anyone who can tell me? It's again in news. I'm giving you the hint. Turkey, Khalifa Erdogan, he has converted something. Have you followed this or not? Very important for your international relation and also for your political theory also. None of you know about it. Hagia Sophia. The city of Constantinople was conquered by the Ottoman Turks in medieval times. It belonged to the Romans, right? The whole ancient Holy Roman Empire. And Ottoman Turks dismantled it. They occupied Constantinople. Today the name of Constantinople is Istanbul, the capital city of Turkey. So what they are saying, that Roman Empire sitting in Rome, Italy, Vatican today, it used to decide everything in the Europe, not only in Italy, even in France, even in Germany, even in England, everywhere, wherever there were Christians living. So they were inadvertently linked with the Holy Roman Empire. And that is why when you will study this French Revolution, you will, the first thing that Napoleon will do is to dismantle the Holy Roman Empire. It is he who will finally finish Roman Empire, and he will say that priests of France, Paris, priest in Paris church will be from far France, not from Rome. They will not be imported from Rome. He nationalized the churches. So Roman church in medieval Europe even used to take call on what would happen in France, and not within the state also, the local church, which was guided by the Roman church. Have you studied Khilafat movement? The Ali brothers rallied for, again, Turkey, Khalifa, the Caliph, 1919, Gandhiji merged Khilafat and non-cooperation. So again, you see outside the state, just like Roman Empire, the Turkey, the Constantinople, the fallen Constantinople, the Istanbul was, it still remains the pride for the Sunni Muslims. And what is happening now? The Hagia Sophia, the church, it was into a museum. It has been converted into mosque by Erdogan, the president. And Erdogan is trying to become the new savior of the Sunni Muslims now that Saudi Arabia is trying to become liberal. Okay. New political order is emerging. UAE and Israel signed a deal few days back. I hope you read it. Saudi is siding more with India than Pakistan. So Pakistan is siding with Erdogan. Please remember this. Please read this. This is very, very useful in paper 1 and of course in paper 2, international relations. So what monist theory is saying, that no outside, no Istanbul or no Roman Empire will influence inside politics, or no local church will take a call on it. Power should be centralized. Okay, so it is called a monistic theory. All of you understood, or you have a question here? What is monist theory of sovereignty? All of you understood? Why it is called Hobbesian? Because Thomas Hobbes propounded it. Any questions here? Feel free to ask. No questions?
Sir, what is mono in this theory? I mean, since the sovereignty is divided between two different branches, I don't
No, you misunderstood. sovereignty is divided. That's why mono theory came.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, please, again, anyone having confusion? See, mono theory came because sovereignty was divided. Right? What happened before the emergence of Thomas Hobbes and his monist theory was what I told you. In medieval Europe, this line, the first point given here, this one, see, this one is before the emergence of monistic theory. And that is why monistic theory, proponents of monistic theory are saying power should be centralized. Okay, Godfather-like stuff. Did you understand or not?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, anyone? Any other question? Okay, so I'm proceeding here. Pluralist theory of sovereignty. Again, this will challenge the monist theory of sovereignty. This will challenge the monist theory. Mono one, muni one, plural means more than one. And again, it's coming after Second World War. The same time post-behavioralism, postmodernism is coming. What it says, you see, monist theory dominated till Second World War. And post-war, it was felt there is need to modify the concept of sovereignty. Respect for international law should be encouraged. For example, UN, emergence of supranational institutions. Example, I'll ask you when I explain this to you. Now, monist theory dominated till Second World War, and it is alleged by pluralist theory proponents that it was monist theory was one of the main reasons for the two world wars. Why? Why blame a theory? Anyone?
Because it led to dictatorship.
Very good. It did not lead to dictatorship. It led to, high ambitions. Actually, political science and history go together. They do not operate in isolation. This is what I told you in the orientation class as well. What happened before First World War was Europe was divided into rival armed gangs. 6 main countries. Okay, 6 main countries were there in Europe, and Europe was on the flashpoint of a war, sitting on the gunpowder. It was said. Why? Because every country was like, I am the one. Okay, I am the main sovereign. How can Russia? How can Austria-Hungary dictate over Italy? How can Italy say anything to France? How can England not be, the cradle of civilization as they believe them to be? So this monist theory led to extreme centralization in these countries, and this extreme centralization led to far off ambitions, and these ambitions came into confrontation with each other. Is this clear, or any question?
Sir, didn't the monistic theory apply to India?
India was a colony at that time. How would it apply to India?
Yes.
Someone asked, Subhana, you are asking this, right?
Yes, sir.
Just one thing. If anyone asks, then all of you also can listen. I say anything, all of you can listen. But if someone asks a question, then all of you can listen. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Subhana, India was a colony. Britain was one of the main sovereigns. Okay. So it was felt that this monist theory has done so much damage to us. We have fought amongst ourselves. See, the condition of Europe after Second World War was they were in a very somber mood. They were very humbled. Okay, despite Germany being defeated, the after effects of war were very much, even economic, psychological, all sort of demographies changed of some countries. Countries like Finland still are not able to fulfill it. There are sex ratio is favorable in terms in, and it has still not been compensated. So post war it was felt it is a need of the hour to modify the concept of sovereignty. So again, remember what happened before monist theory? I just told all of you what happened before monist theory. Sovereignty was fragmented. Church, Khalifa, right? Fragmented theory. Now again they will say bring it back, but not with religious undertone. International laws, emergence of supranational institution. Example, come on, tell me the names. Don't tell me UNO. UNO is already written.
EU, sir.
What?
EU, European Union.
EU, good. EU, WTO, IMF, World Bank, SEO. All these things are what? Supranational institutions. Okay, so emergence of supranational institutions will be ushered in. Monist theory has led to conflict. Let there be pluralist theory, and pluralist theory says that absolute sovereignty should not be encouraged. So all of us, all the countries should be a member of UNO. Then there are so many trade bodies, SAFTA, BAFTA, all you have to study in your international relations, this subject itself.
Sir, excuse me, sir. Since America is now leaving all these international bodies, can we say we are moving to a monistic theory again?
No, America has just moved away from UNESCO and second one WHO, right?
Yes, sir.
Maybe,
And
maybe.
even Human Rights Commission, the
Yes,
UNHRC.
yes.
Yes.
The institutions that you just mentioned, which America has left, they are actually very, very toothless organizations. These organizations will be reinvented, or gradually following, taking example from, taking inspiration from America, more other countries will leave. More countries might leave. Israel has also left, right? So the thing is, will a will an alternative be generated? That remains to be seen. If they have left UNESCO, then will there be an alternative be generated in near future? That remains to be seen. We are not sure about that. If it does not happen, then maybe this trend would continue. Maybe UN would. I don't want that to happen. God forbid. Maybe UN would meet the fate of League of the Nations. If you all know what is League of the Nations, anyone who does not know what is League of Nations, something like UN was created after First World War, but it was actually a, you know, kind of a puppet show. So could not yield results. So if this trend continues, if all nations start leaving these supranational institutions, which I am not at least seeing happening right now, UNESCO and this UNHRC, Saudi Arabia is the holding the chair of UNHRC. Isn't that a joke? Okay, someone being driven by medieval archaic Sharia law is talking about human rights. So if they are leaving WTO, if they are leaving UNO without an option being created, that would be further going back to monistic policy. But the world has learned its lessons, right? World has saw witnessed wars, and there is again another thing that I would add here, but later on. So let us quickly come back to four things we have seen. What first one was pluralist theory, sorry, monist theory, pluralist theory, and one more thing. So now we are sovereignty. So now we are coming to our theory of liberal state actually. Any questions here? Anyone? Anyone?
So when we speak about multilateral relations between nations, is it based on
Multilateral?
this theory of relations? When we speak about multilateral relations between various countries, is it based on this pluralistic theory?
Not precisely. No, not precisely based on pluralist theory. Multilateral. Every country is having multilateral relation. India is here. You come to Delhi, you see all the countries have their embassies in Delhi at Chanakyapuri. So actually, it's not governed by pluralist theory. Of course, pluralist theory has certain effects into it. Some small contribution, not the entire part. We'll study these things later on. Can I move it? Anyone else? Any other doubts? Pluralists believe that state is an association and it alone cannot fulfill all the interest of a man. You know what is an association? So many people coming together for some shared common benefit. Okay, and you cannot say which individual is most important here because all of them have the same role. So monastic theory can lead to war because it makes nation become over ambitious. State may become autocratic if it follows monastic theory because the sovereign will never be challenged. Right? Monastic theory says that sovereignty is unfragmented, undivided. Pluralist theory is more practical than monistic theory, is what we believe in. One more thing I would like to tell you that monistic theory is believed to be a part of legal jurisprudence. Legal jurisprudence means those who are into law, those who are sincerely into, because political science, of course, has there's this word called jurisprudence. It means every law has a particular philosophy. When I say guilty until proven innocent, this is a jurisprudence. No one can be asked to testify in his or her own case. Again, this is a jurisprudence. Philosophy behind a particular law. Innocent until proven guilty, right? This is what happens in most of the cases. I don't want to discuss those cases where it's the other way around. So there's a certain jurisprudence. So legal jurisprudence go with monistic theory. When sociology's impact, when we have seen this yesterday, that political science is an interconnected subject, so many other subjects have their impact on political science, then emerges pluralist theory. Okay, that do not see it as something that is a core content of political science and law, that this is what the bookish definition of sovereign is. Do not go by that, but try to analyze the impact of such a sovereign. Okay, today the king might be very good, but maybe 3 to 4 years, Louis XVI, French Revolution, Bourbon dynasty, maybe Louis I and Louis II were very good, but the 16th one was totally a crap, right? Led to a bloody revolution, complete moron. If you will study French Revolution, you will know this, what I'm talking about. So do not believe into absolute rights of the king or the sovereign. It can be king, it can be an elected prime minister, it can be a president, it can be a dictator. Their authority has to be checked, correct? So that is why pluralist theory is having impact from sociologists. Okay, monistic theory is strictly legal. You understood the difference between the two and why pluralist theory is favored in place of monist theory. All of you understood it?
Sir, can you explain the slide again? I didn't understand the jurisprudence part.
Jurisprudence means a philosophy behind a particular law. Suppose if someone says that Riya Chakraborty is liable for the killing of Sushant Singh Rajput, right? She will not be hanged by merely me and you believing into this. What me and you are believing has to be proved in a competent court. By competent court, I mean courts that are established by law. The session court, the high courts, and then the Supreme Court of India. Innocent until proven guilty, right? So this is the jurisprudence. This is what law assumes, right? And your own testimony will not be counted if you are involved into the case. So Ria cannot say, no, 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 I am innocent. I am such a petite creature. I am such a good actor. I cannot do that. No, you cannot testify in your own case. This is what the jurisprudence says. You have to, someone else has to be share the onus of the burden of proof, right? So this is what jurisprudence is. Now I'm telling you that legal jurisprudence, the law people, those who write, actually Dicey, A.B. Dicey, you will know, he's called the father of jurisprudence also. So these people endorse monist theory because it is very convenient for them to theorize it, that one person, numero uno, and the buck stops at him. He will take the entire calls. He will call all the shots because law deals with specifics. Law deals with specifics, not with generalists. Law does not generalize, although courts are also doing activism these days. Okay, don't write these.
Sir, if jurisprudence is there, I mean the extrajudicial killings that happened, especially in Hyderabad and the recent UP, then why it is not? Isn't it like
Hyderabad stuff was, if it was extrajudicial killing as you called it, but then that has to be proven in a competent court that the police fired first and the fugitives did not fire first. Who will do that? Wherever there is an encounter, there is this stuff going on that it has happened this like. So then how will you prove it in a court? Who was there? Was there a media person who would cover that? Like the other one who could testify is dead. Some of the policemen are injured, right? So it's very difficult to be proven in a court of law. That is why these legal jurisprudence people abide with the monist theory. Why? Because it is very convenient for them to categorize and theorize that. However, pluralist theory is having impact from sociologists who believe that if you say that buck will stop at one person or sovereignty will not be shared, then it can lead to catastrophes. Okay, try to analyze what the impact on society would be. Is this point clear to all of you? Yes or no? Do not give me examples now. Please, is this point clear to all of you? Why pluralist theory is having impact from sociologists and why monist theory is having impact from legal people? Okay?
Sir, is
Yes.
pluralist sovereign contradictory in terms?
How contradictory?
Like sovereign means single authority rights.
Again, I told you, they have redefined this thing. Sovereign means single authority, but there has to be some accountability. They have redefined this thing. So I guess all of you understood this essence, right? Behavioralism, sovereignty, monist theory, pluralist theory. 4 things we have done. Now let us think the liberal theory of state. So this was the background to explain you the theme for today. Finally, social contract theory. Anyone heard about it? There are components to liberal theory of state. First thing is regarding the origin of state. What does liberal theory of state says about the origin of state? Liberal theory of state says that state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having impact from social origin. What does liberal theory of state says? That state is having How did state come into being? Anyone? How did state come into being? No idea. Man was living into caves in Paleolithic era. That is what your ancient history tells you. He started moving. He started living in small communities. These small communities in turn turned into big communities, and then it was felt. See, we will when we will study sovereignty in more details because it is already given in your syllabus. I have just explained this to be able to explain you what is liberal theory, which I can now do with ease. Okay, and it will be easy for you to understand also. So when you will study Kautilya or great Chanakya about sovereignty, what he says that he has used a term Matsya Nyaya. What Matsya Nyaya? What is Matsya? It's a Sanskrit word for fish. So before the advent of state, what existed? Matsya Nyaya, which means big fish will eat up the small fish. That is why state was needed. Might is right, should not be. Any doubts here? This chat again. Matsya Nyaya is clear? Yes or no?
No, sir. Can you repeat it again?
Yeah, of course. Matsya Nyaya means, Matsya means fish in Sanskrit, that the big fish will eat up the small fish. Like it happens in jungle, it happens in the oceans and seas, that big fish eats up the small fish. Might is right. So people who are weak, people who are vulnerable, people who are depressed, oppressed, and all sort of negative adjectives are attached with them, they will be wiped away by strong, influential, and resourceful people. This is what happens in Matsya, and this is what Kautilya in Arthashastra writes, that before the advent of state, there was Matsya prevailing. That is why he takes divine right. I'm not going into that all that right now. So he says state is needed. State will protect everyone. Okay. So Anna, is it all right? Tell me. Understood this one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So origin of theory of social contract theory is given for the liberal theory of state. Regarding the origin, liberal theory of state, the proponents of liberal theory of state believe that state comes into being because of social contract. Now, what is this social contract that we have to understand very carefully? We will discuss this again in Western political theory, but still again we will discuss this here. What it says that state comes into being because me and you are the common people. We submit our some liberty, we sacrifice our some part of freedom, of some part of our autonomy or liberty to the ruler. Okay, we submit, we buy it away, we just sacrifice it, we surrender it to the ruler. Because if everyone starts asserting itself, imagine a situation. Have you seen this movie Bruce Almighty? If not, please say it. See, I will keep referring to movie, do not watch it immediately. Bruce
Yes, sir.
Almighty.
I've seen the movie.
Oh, okay. Those who have not seen it, I'll tell you. Bruce Almighty is a masterpiece by master craftsman Jim Carrey. And here, what happens in that movie? He says that if I was God, if I were God, I would have granted everyone wish in the world. So God said, "Okay, Aja, you become God," and he does this. He grants all the wishes of everyone. So there is a chaos, right? That is why social contract theory is needed. Not everyone wishes can be fulfilled all the time. It will destroy this world. Try to imagine this. Just 5-6 billion people living here, 1.35 billion living in our own country, everyone having his or her own opinion on what is right and might, what is right and to be done, ethical and moral. So if everyone was to do the same thing, won't there be an utter chaos, a perfect recipe for disaster, catastrophe? So that is why it is said that we need to curb our liberty. Okay, there is something that me and you should not indulge into. Like there was lockdown imposed and people were beaten mercilessly. You have seen the videos. I've also seen even in your city, in here also, who were roaming around without a purpose by the police. Why? Because they might be acting as a courier for coronavirus, right? So even if you wish to go away, even if you wish to walk away and you want to step out from your house, the government of the day told you do not do that, right? That is what social contract theory says, that we need to submit our liberty with the government so that there can be good governance, there can be a congenial environment for all of us. Okay, we submit some part of our freedom to the person we have elected, and he will protect us, he will grant security to us. Our lives will be protected if all of us submit some part of our autonomy or liberty or freedom to the ruler. Is this all right to all of you? What is social contract? It's a theory between the ruler and the ruled, that we have elected you, You are supposed to protect us. How will you protect us? We are sacrificing with some part of our liberty. So even if you ask us that today is a emergency, okay, for whatever reason, there is war going on, do not go to Ladakh, we will not go there. Did you understand? Yes or no? Any questions here? Social contract is a contract between the ruler and the ruled, where the ruled citizens willingly sacrifice some part of their freedom to the ruler so that he can rule in a very amicable way. Please tell me if you have understood this or not. Yes or no. Any question, then please ask. Do not hesitate at all. And now I can again see the chats. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, no questions? Okay. So, origin of state according to liberal theory, social contract theory. Second point, welfare and night watchman state. What is the function of the state? Who is a night watchman? If you have played cricket or if you have followed cricket, you must know who is a night watchman. Oh,
Tailenders.
Rahul Dravid? Huh?
Tailenders, sir.
Tailenders. Why tailenders?
I mean, they will send first. I mean, when the day is going to end, then they will come on bat when the first wicket fall.
Okay, those who do not understand this, just let me submit for all of you. Test match. This concept comes from test match. Like India is chasing a mammoth total. I stopped watching cricket some 5-6 years back, and I am very happy with this decision. I am not into IPL. So 2001 was the last match I saw. 2011. So India is chasing a mammoth total on fourth day of a test somewhere in Australia, maybe SCG. Melbourne, okay, Waka, the most bouncy pitch of those times. And Australia has set up a target of 600 runs. And first day, India makes 250 runs and certainly Sehwag is out, right? Very fabulous situation which I have seen. Now only 5 overs are left for that day. So instead of sending Rahul Dravid, they send someone like Venkatesh Prasad. Who?
Ishan Sharma, like that person.
Bowlers will be sent, tailenders will be sent. Even if you get out, there is no harm. But if Rahul Dravid gets out, most of Indians will see we have lost the match. This was the Ishant Sharma thing was called a night watchman. Okay, you are there not to score. You are there to protect the main batsman. Why protect the main batsman? He's scared. Yes, he's scared because only 5 overs are left. Might nick the ball. He might get out. Why take the chance? Tomorrow, fresh day, Ishant Sharma will be out. No one is going to be worried. Dravid will come. He will build his innings, right? But he can get out just by sheer luck or chance in today's 5 overs that are remaining. So this is what night watchman was. These tailenders were sent to save the main batsman for that day's play. Okay. Many of them turned up tomorrow and they started hitting like anything because they knew that their wicket does not value. Okay. So state function, liberal theory says that it is welfare oriented and it must be confined to night watchman. Now, what is night watchman? The concept comes from cricket. Welfare purpose. State must fulfill the welfare purpose compulsorily, which means state must take care of poor, destitute, people who are vulnerable, people who are not well off. State must make provisions. State must look after law and order, defense, maybe economy to certain extent, the central provisions, the central bank and monetary and fiscal policies, which we have just studied with Nirasa, and foreign matters. Do not micromanage. State should not micromanage. Okay. This is again straight from what is called a laissez-faire. How many of you know this term? I guess you all know it. Laissez-faire. Not heard this term, laissez-faire? It translates into leave us alone, right? So laissez-faire says that citizens and businesses should be left. Government should not micromanage that. The business of business is to do business, and government has no business to be in business. What Modi used to tell before elections, maximum governance, minimum government. Again, laissez-faire, night watchman theory. State will regulate, state will not indulge. State will not be a party to the business. State will not micromanage everything. State will create congenial environment for business. So liberal theory talks about state's function being limited to a night watchman. Let the main batsman come and play. You are just a night watchman. You have to protect them. So you have to build law and order and defense. Law and order for internal security, defense from external security, so that our lovely nations, countries do not come barge in and eaters. Is this clear to everyone? If not, then ask. Please, if you have any question regarding welfare and night watchman role of the state, then please ask. All of you are okay? Sumana, are you all right? Did you understand?
Yes,
Sarat,
sir.
Sarat, Hari, Anirudh. I am remembering your names also.
No questions from my end, sir.
What?
No questions from my end.
Okay, now I can see the chats also. Let us free Nithya. Okay, fine. Yes. So two things. What liberal theory of state tell us? The origin of state. They believe in social contract theory. Function welfare oriented. Be a night watchman. Do not be the main massman. You are a tail ender. Remain a tail ender. Remain a Nishank Sharma. Do not try to be a Rao Dravid. Next. State's nature. Neutral arbitrator. Everyone is equal in the eye of state. Okay. Neutral arbitrator. State shall not take sides. Judiciary is a part of state. Okay, and judiciary is supposed to function in a neutral way. Do not take sides. Neutral arbitrator. Arbitrator means someone who meddles into confrontation and comes up with a meaningful conclusion, a meaningful judgment. So everyone is equal in the eye of the state. All people are equal. That is why there is this blindfolded. The liberty statue is the justice statue is blindfolded because justice cannot see who the justice is being served because it might be tempted to take sides if they see who is the party to these case, who are the parties to the case, and if there is a correction, then that must remain then and there. It must not come into the course of justice, right? So the state's nature would be for neutral arbitrator, it will not take side. This is what liberal theory says. And justice will be done by the state. Now, Marxists believe that state is what they call a bourgeois instrument, which means state has been captured. State is at the mercy of the bourgeois. Bourgeois means Amir Admi, rich people. Okay, so that's why Karl Marx says state shall wither away. How will state wither away? When the proletariat or the poor man will usher in the bloody revolution. Okay, when poors will kill the rich people in a bloodbath. This is what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels believe in. That let there be a bloody revolution. Violence has to happen, is what Marxists believe in. Okay, so again, liberal theory will go against that. There is no need for a bloody revolution. Come on, state will do justice. It's a neutral arbitrator, is what liberals believe. So this is a contrary position to what Marxist theory of state would say. So revolt against the state is uncalled for. State is a good thing. State is not a bourgeois instrument as endorsed by the Marxists, right? So these are the 4 to 5 things that you need to remember regarding the liberal theory of state. Any questions you have, please feel free to ask. This is all what I have to discuss with you today. So any questions you have, please feel free to ask regarding whatever we have discussed today.
Sir, who are liberals then according to this theory? Those who follow this set of norms.
Yes, of course.
And then who are non-liberals? I mean, in our current democracy, left wing, right wing, we call right wing people. I mean, they are
those who do not believe in this are not believers of liberal theory of state. Liberals are not completely imbibed into liberal theory of state. There is a certain section among liberal who believe that the theory of state should be so and so, which is just that we discovered. Okay, there is no other proponent of liberal theory of state than what you have seen on the slide, right? Ravi, I'll come to your question. I can see the chats now. So just give me 1 minute to explain it. So there, liberals say that someone who believes that state there should be a Mai Baap Sarkar, which means what is Mai Baap Sarkar? Like all pervading, all encompassing, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient state. State will do everything. Okay, that's not what the liberal would say. Liberals want a limited role for the state. Now Ravi has asked, revolt against state is uncalled for. Means always public should fight against state. How will public fight against state if revolt is uncalled for? You have not framed it correctly, Ravi. How will public should fight against state? No. If revolt is uncalled for, Public will stand with the state. It will not fight against the state, right? Did you understand, Ravi? Now, Vishnu, 1949 Treaty of Peace and Friendship between India and Bhutan has allowed India to take part in the politics. This is not sovereignty. They have submitted to us. Now, this theory, this agreement has been called into question. Do you know this? Do you know what happened before elections last year in Bhutan? This we will talk in IR. Bhutan objected to this, the very clause that you are mentioning. Achita, I'll come to your question. So Bhutan has called this into question, and then India did something that Bhutan, the Prime Minister of Bhutan was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'll not do that. So this happened. Bhutan is actually a natural ally of India. The first visit of Prime Minister Modi after he became Prime Minister was to Bhutan in 2014 itself. So Bhutan has no other option than us. Now, Archita has a question. Monolistic kya hota hai? It's monistic, not monolistic. Archita says that state doing something wrong, it is believed that always state is pro-people in liberal city. No, even if state is doing something wrong, there are certain sub-components in a state. If the government is wrong, judiciary will take care. If the judiciary is wrong, government will take care. You cannot challenge state at large. You cannot say that that would be so Naxal thing, right? Sab mile hue ji. No, that does not happen that way. The government is corrupt, the judiciary is corrupt, the IS officer is corrupt, the IPS, the NSA. You are the only one who is the honest. No. Some component of state would regulate and check if one component or one organ tends to go berserk. Did you understand, Archita? That state can be wrong, but state has been crafted in a way that it will be back to doing right things. People will force them to. That is why elections are held. That is why PILs are filed in court. Yes, revolt against the state is uncalled for. Revolt through ballot. Go and vote out. Who stops you? No, in China it's not possible. China is monistic theory, right? Anirudh, China is monistic theory. You know, Xi Jinping, he has elevated himself to the level of Mao Zedong. He will remain the chairman of China Communist Party of China until he dies. Only Mao Zedong has this status. And there is no other party in China other than the Communist Party. Same party puts up same 2 or 3 candidates. You can vote for either of them. Policies would remain same. You cannot question the government. There is no social media. There is no free press. There is no judiciary in China. That's ultimate monist theory right now. There are no liberals in China. There are only communists in China. Liberals in China, they are into concentration camps. There was this guy who won an award. I'm unable to recall the name of that guy. Where he has disappeared, no one knows. Okay. Liberal means you are willing to accommodate the other view. But when only one view is all pervading and all encompassed, how can there be any liberal? Yes, absolutely. North Korea and China are absolutely on the same page. They are best of the friends, right? Don't you see Kim Jong-un and this Xi Jinping roaming around together? Now they have also befriended another rogue state, Pakistan, and they are together cozying up to Turkey. Okay. Anything else? All of you understood? No issues at all? Okay then, let us meet tomorrow.